Damn, Jordan doesn't have Twitter Premium, so. All right, cool. I think we are live. So if you are joining us, we are diving deep into brand direction on this one. We got Bimma back. He escaped from the clutches.
I escaped.
A big sneaker. And then but he's back. Yeah, we got the whole squad. But yeah, like we are diving into brand direction this time. We're going to talk about cringe big brand activities. Where we're going to talk about large designers and creators and how they interplay with brands. We're going to go into some of the launches of these kind of AI wearable products and how they could be handling their direction, right? And we are 4 hours into the sneaker collaborator power rankings, which is definitely the Bimma sweet spot. How many times over under have you been tagged since those went live?
Easily 100.
All right, so we may touch on that too. We'll dive into it. But gentlemen, anyone have any good opening stories? Y'all anywhere interesting in the world? Book any big deals? What are we doing?
Oh, absolutely. I just burned back from the airport straight to my house. I've been in Los Angeles at a Topgolf event. It was like Topgolf meets a nightclub. Larry June performed. These are
Larry June performed. Wow.
Larry June performed. It was wild.
Culturally relevant booking from Topgolf. Let's go.
Wow.
It was wild, y'all. It was a lot of fun. And I've got 3 beverages. I have a hot for my voice, I have a cold for relaxation, and I have water for hydration. So,
man, this man is bouncing back. I ain't even seen nothing like this before.
That's right. Well, the true bounce back is you, Bimma. Welcome. We were worried that Big Sneaker had Boeinged you.
They tried to get me, man.
Did you use any particular martial arts styles to escape from where you were held, or was it?
And I gotta protect those secrets, Oren. But I was they had me down for a bit, but the escape was real. I was a part of the trades that happened today. Maybe that's going too far.
Yeah.
I would stop. We're going too far.
All right,
but no, it's good to be back.
Hey, Ashwinn, I think we're going to lead with you just because you put out some impassioned and bolden words about Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and that touched all of our hearts because it was about how not just of our love for our WWE brethren, but for just how many retarded scenarios we've been in about what brands making these kind of decisions behind closed doors. Can you give us a little breakdown of what happened, and we can dive into it?
We'll give some context here. First, I get a DM from a buddy of mine, and he's like, look at what I just saw in the grocery store. And I said, did you see this? It was a stand of Dwayne Johnson and his energy drink brand Zoa. And it said Big Dwayne Energy on the side. And I was like, can you confirm that this picture was taken today and not in 2016? And he's like, I'm in the grocery store right now. So I look into this and I'm like, this is a relic of the past. This has been in grocery stores for a long time. I just haven't noticed it. So I start looking into this campaign. This campaign launched 5 months ago. And then I go on the website for Zoa. And Zoa's been around for a few years now. If you go on their website, it says Big Dwayne Energy is here, right? That's a hero image and text on their website. So I also throw up Wayback Machine, which gives you kind of like archive snapshots of
you're pulling out all the tools. My man's doing investigative journalism.
I'm doing investigative journalism here. Okay, so I'm looking in 2020. What were they saying? 2021, 2022. Nothing about Big Dwayne Energy. So I'm like, okay, this campaign has just launched. So I look into all of the ads, everything that they're running here, and I find this interview with the CMO, and the CMO says, we're super excited to launch this campaign. They launched it 4 months ago. We're super excited to launch this campaign with Big Dwayne Energy because we want to tap into what's culturally relevant, and this is culturally relevant right now. And so I'm looking at this, and I'm like, BDE was a hot kind of term and meme in 2018, made a little bit of resurgence in 2020 when people are talking about it. But in 2024, who is referencing BDE? Who's referencing Big Dwayne Energy?
Do we think Zoa tested this? Are they going purely off vibes, or are they like, hey, we broke this down into multi-categories, we tested with our target, and they really resonated with Big Dwayne?
So here's what I think. And I'm curious from Jordan and Bimma's perspective, obviously coming from more of the kind of like big corporate campaign side and how long these things take to roll out. But I'll play devil's advocate to my own commentary. My own commentary is, listen, if you're hitting a younger generation, younger millennials, Gen Z, like this is not the message to be hitting them with, right? This is such a dated term. But if you're hitting older millennials, younger Gen X, older Gen X, like, okay, is this just something that they still find funny and resonates with them? And that's really,
man, so, if you're hitting the far end of the bell curve, you hitting not the other end, the deep end of the bell curve.
we're hitting the deep end, you know, and it's a big market. So it's justifiable if that's the audience and that's the research. But off the cuff, it did not strike me as very culturally relevant.
Wait, Ashwin, and you didn't point out, I was trying to look for it, but didn't you do a like trend search on Big D Energy, and it peaked like 2 years ago?
Yeah, it peaked in 2018. It has that resurgence.
2 years ago, 6 years ago.
Honestly, if you pull out Google Trends Australia, you are doing more research than a 29-year-old sorority girl researching her new boyfriend. I'm just saying, you try to find some X's.
I go deep.
You know, this is a toolkit. Let's break down the toolkit though, just to run through what he did, because I actually think this is fascinating to break down for the man. You know, he literally used Wayback Machine, so you can view what websites look like in previous years.
Yeah, so
Google Trends, so you can see the search volume of what happened in there. Any other tricks when you were deciphering this?
Yeah, so we'll talk about this, right? Google Trends, this is easy. You can just get some general interest for any search term that you want to put in here. So you put in a couple variations. You put Big D Energy, BDE, Big Dick Energy, whatever, and you're going to see different spikes. Now, if you want to go a level beyond this, you want more granularity into this data, you're going to use something called Ahrefs, or you're going to use SEMrush, which is, you know, that's paid stuff. It's like $100 a month. But if you're really looking for keyword volume and where that traffic drives to, that's a invaluable tool. So that's like the next kind of toolkit layer. Then third, there's this site called Wayback Machine. Wayback Machine is probably one of the more valuable websites on the internet. You can plug in any URL into Wayback Machine, and it takes Wayback Machine basically is an internet archive of that website over time and all of the pages of that website. So I love to look at that website for a couple of things. How has messaging changed for a brand over time? But also, how has a brand's look changed over time, right? So if I want to say, hey, Athletic Greens looks, you know, super sexy and hot today, let me not mimic what they're doing today. What did they look like when they launched in 2009? What was the messaging? What was the audience that they were going after? You can just go find that, right? And it's not this revisionist history, because it's like, hey, those are just the facts of what they said back then. So Wayback Machine, frankly, a tool that I was just gatekeeping for a while, but there, it's out there. It's out there for the masses to use however they want to use it now.
Look, I, you know, Ashwin, you asked a question. There are two things that came to mind when you asked how would other brands or big brands approach this and how we get stuck into using dated language. But one thing I want to address real quick, and probably a bit of a name drop, but I was with Josh Richards earlier, like yesterday, right? Gen Z, 10 million followers on TikTok, however many followers on Instagram. I can tell you right now, he's 22, and this would not be relevant to him ever. He told me he told me anybody over 33 was antique. So I can tell you right now. I will tell you right now, if the goal of this was to attract Gen Z, it is attracting boomers.
Well, I also question how many like Gen Z know who The Rock is. I mean, do we have anyone on this channel who's actually tapped into the WWE metaverse?
I mean, I was going to say, just off San Andreas alone, that was like a watershed moment for most Gen Z growing up, you know?
Or what's the ones with Kevin Hart?
Jumanji?
Yeah, I don't know. The Rock and but I definitely Ashwin. So when you went back and you saw the quote from the CMO, curiously, I didn't see CMO represented on the homepage. They did have Chief Innovation Officer.
Chief Positivity Officer.
Gen Z is in the chat. Gen Z in the chat.
Oh, here we go. Gen Z.
Yeah, Gen Z rides with The Rock. Gen Z was like they're Zoa in and out. It's Zoe and what's and the Nui, whatever Kardashians is. I know what y'all doing.
You know, I think an interesting question for you guys, Jordan and Bimma, is, you know, one argument is, hey, they might have started planning this campaign and this idea 3 years ago when maybe it was more relevant. Is there a world in which it takes 2-3 years for a campaign like this to roll out across the marketing, the merchandising, all the partners you got to tee up for this?
At least not in my experience. Absolutely not. The brands that I've worked with are 9 times out of 10, they're actually rushing to market. So like a lot of times my experience has been, we have not been buttoned up and we're actually planning things in flight, maybe like 2 months before things go to market.
I will say with retail. So I've sold in a lot of merchandise, a lot at big retail. And we would be basically pitching. We would be pitching like a year prior, and that's what basically, and that's what files of what's on the merchandisers. So basically, for holiday, like the following, and like, but you can like edit that until things go into production. You've got like to that 6-9 months, but it wouldn't be out of the question. Like at least from a product roadmap perspective, and like what is the key campaign around that product? That could be a year in advance, easy.
Absolutely, and that's what I was thinking is like product standpoint. Yes, like theoretically, there's someone like, for example, at Nike, the Olympic stuff that's rolling out right now. Someone was cooking up theoretically 2 years ago, not the like meat of it, but the product and the
big,
look and the like big
50,000 feet up.
overarching. Yeah, but for this size of a energy drink or a beverage, whatever this is, no. I mean, I'm sure you're waiting, to the last minute. I mean, and at Nike, I joke with people now. I got booked for like a speaking gig in February, and they were like ready to jump on the call and start discussing things. I've had that a couple times when people discuss 6 months out, and I'm like, I respect the hell out of this. I would have been in a hotel lobby the night before at 2 a.m. drafting up, some of these things.
But the strategy might change. Look, we could all be on Lemonade, by the time that we hit over there. Air chat could have come back. You never know,
It's so true.
So
speaking of the what I think happened here, I was just one thing to add, Oren. I think what happened here is there were people in the room. There was somebody who had influence in the room. This was the thing that they thought was a really good idea. There were other folks in the room that didn't feel confident taking down this idea because likely that person actually had influence and they didn't say anything. And that's likely what happened here because there's no other way. If you actually tested this, if you actually did just a little bit of work that Ashwinn did, there's no way this gets through there's no way that this gets through.
So I want to pivot this into one of the things that that you were talking about inside the chat earlier, and this idea of like these celebrities and these brand directors and the people that are coming in to be the faces or voices of these brands. Obviously, this is one of The Rock's many endeavors. You were talking particularly about Salehe and Puma. I think it's a good topic overall. You want to set the stage a bit about what's happening there and why it's a relevant topic?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, Salehe Bimma is a industrial designer who has been collaborating with the biggest brands in footwear for like the last couple of years, right? So I would say he's most known for his partnership with Crocs, where he's completely created totally new product and put Crocs into a stratosphere when it comes to sneakerhead type of crowd. Folks are actually wearing Crocs, right? These are totally new shoes. He's got a totally new DNA. He released a sneaker with them that was in the top right, kind of that guava colored sneaker, kind of hiking boot or hiking shoe.
Side note, did you see the colorway that he put out today? It looks very
I did. Oh, I already sent my note. I said, yep, need those.
I thought you did. I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah, so that, he's worked with New Balance, Versace. He did these chain reactions with 2 Chainz. And then now he announced his partnership with Puma. And so for, obviously we have an audience here that is global. In the US, I'll be very honest. Puma has not been in the conversation when it comes to driving influence in the sneaker space, in the fashion space. And so this is a really big deal for Salehe to go there. The other thing that's really big about this is Salehe has 3 other major partnerships that are all in flight right now. So he's still locked in with New Balance. He is still locked in with Crocs, and he is absolutely locked in with Moncler via a confirmed DM from him. And so what's interesting to me is we have a collaborator, creator, designer that is now working across 4 brands, and arguably 3 of them are competitors. So I'm curious to know from the group too, like thoughts on like this happening and like, other than Pharrell, like, is that a weird thing? Is that a good thing? Is that bad for brands? What do y'all think?
Right. Salehe's sort of legendarily known for trying to get the bag, right? I think sort of like the back end of that. And so I respect that, because you do have to know, hey, you're in the culture, you're doing that. Like you want to go as far as you can, not just to secure the money, but also to like get your profile as large as you can when you have that moment, that opportunity is number one. But I do think on the brand side, it's super confusing. Like they're tapping in, right? Like they're trying to get cultural relevancy by doing that, but then that's getting spread around massive. Like how far does that?
Uh-oh. Did y'all lose him too?
I think he was taken down.
Oh my God.
Uh-oh. They did not like what he was saying.
Salehe is powerful in the OC. You guys got to watch out. We did talk about the OC police department who will enforce things. So,
oh my God.
Bimma, I'm actually, just to piggyback a little bit on Oren, I'm impressed. I'm not mad at all. I'm like, oh my gosh, on his side, from another standpoint, I didn't even realize he had New Balance. I totally forgot about that. Jacques Slade took him down. Sorry, Jacques. You know how big
Jacques.
big
What up, Jacques?
coming in the comments here. Jacques, I saw Jacques last night, actually. Great seeing you, Jacques. For y'all don't know, Jacques Slade, follow your boy if you're interested in this topic, specifically sneakers, amongst many other things. But I forgot that New Balance, and maybe this is part of the exercise and why you're asking, because I would consider myself really tapped in and pay attention, particularly to Salehe. I think he's a really remarkable talent, and I've loved to see what he's done. But I don't even now have room in my brain for a New Balance Salehe collaboration. And so I do think that's interesting. I do associate him with Crocs. I think about him from a Versace standpoint. To me, though, the Puma Hoops one that I would say that I think is really interesting is this is his first performance sneaker. So all of these others have had this kind of really, streetwear, off the field, off the court vibe. Moncler, very high luxury. Versace, same. Crocs is very like casual, and this New Balance is, furry. And so the performance angle that Puma has brought him in on from a basketball standpoint, to me, is really cool. And I love that Puma has seemed to be this kind of Puma Hoops, particularly, I've been paying attention to since my time in Nike basketball. They came out and are really kind of irreverent and fun. I think a lot of times these brands get a little too serious on innovation, a little too, we've had the playful Adidas stuff, but they do like this cartoon. They have a mascot, like it's really fun. And I think Salehe and his colorful world that he creates could be really cool on the court from a performance standpoint. I don't know. Ashwinn, what are your thoughts on multiple collaborators across multiple brands from a strategic standpoint?
I think we're in
Ash was saying, get the bag.
I'm saying, listen, everyone's just trying to get their bag. I think one, it's interesting from a creative, kind of creative design standpoint for that brand, right? It like opens them up to just having like a new colorway and recognizable aesthetic coming in from a different designer. I also think we are just in a world where it seems, whether it's in apparel or, physical products, there's collaborations happening between brands, trading one another's packaging and really kind of adopting that brand's packaging. So it's almost like this constant remix culture that we're in, where there's this kind of fundamental question of like, you do enough of this and it's like, what is the core brand, right? Because like, hey, for the past year, you've just been collaborating with 15 people. Like, what do you guys make again? And it's just like this constant treadmill to try to stay relevant or release something new. And I don't know what the answer to that is, right? You could take another extreme and say, we're not doing any of that stuff. Like I don't know, maybe like Patagonia as a brand. Do they do any collaborations? I feel like they've been very minimal. Very kind minimal. Of tight and rigid around their philosophy and how they operate that brand. And it's like a Patagonia vest today looks the same that it did 20 years ago. Those Patagonia pieces, like my uncle has one from 1980. It looks exactly the same. So is there a way to do that? Probably, but you just probably have to be so disciplined looking into the future. And it's like, hey, we're not chasing these short-term, like quarterly boost and views and followers and engagement and bump in sales. And dude, we just make the best X shoe or the best Y, and this is our speed.
It's a bit of a drug, right? Like once a brand starts to do a collab, and if a brand is in a place where they're very vulnerable, right, because they don't have a good brand center and they don't have a good brand strategy or purpose, right, they lose sight of what they're actually trying to solve. And so what they end up doing is they start to take on the identity of the collaborators. And that is the danger that happens when you are no longer known for something, right? At least with Patagonia, we know what Patagonia is known for. They literally, mission statement is, we're here to save the planet. That's why we exist, right? When you look at other companies, right? Let's use Puma as an example. I can't even tell you what Puma's mission is, but what I do know about Puma is, at least I do know that they do make an effort to make innovative product, right? They do innovative product in soccer that gets spoken about a lot. Years back, because this is Olympics time, we saw a lot of Puma. What up, Oren? You back? We saw them
Exactly.
with Usain Bolt, right? And a lot of the Jamaican sprinters. So that was like, reinforcing that. We see them in Formula One right now, even though I think some of the other brands are trying to creep in there. But the danger is when you get so caught up in collaborations, because they can bring immediate attention. They can bring immediate revenue, and they can put you in conversations that you weren't in before. Now, the trick to doing that is you have to build the plane while you're flying it, right? Otherwise, once that partnership's done, you're as irrelevant as you were when you started.
Yeah. I think this is actually a really fascinating comment Yayito has in here. I hope I got that right. But they are saying brand association to build hype now works with personal brands on individuals as well as companies collaborating. So before, you may have just had the companies kind of looking to churn up that hype, and there were always like personal ambitions. But I think in this new era of personal branding, social media, all that, you do want to get the clout even more. And you're incentivized to do the new one, right? We're here talking about this right now because there was a new announcement from Puma Hoops. It's Olympics time. When you're not in the news cycle, then yeah, people are forgetting about it. So, Oren,
do you think that works for Puma, for instance? Like, so I don't know, I've seen tons of Puma collabs. Puma's obviously in kind of like an odd place. I'm not sure what their performance looks like, but they've gotten everyone from there's Rude Puma to what we have here. Is it working for them to do basically volume over like a really specific collaborators? Do y'all feel?
I think the last time that I saw it work for Puma was with Rihanna, and it wasn't this version of the partnership. It was the partnership from 2015, and the reason for that was because of it felt new. It felt relevant to what was happening. Now it kind of just feels like they're doing the same thing over and over again without actually innovating. It's really tricky. These are nuanced things, right? Rihanna's always going to have influence, but the conversation when it comes to how does it carry over into momentum for Puma is who are the partners that they're working with that are actually early adopters and innovators that are going to push the next wave for them. And right now we don't, personally, I don't see that coming from them at the moment. But perhaps Salehe is that opportunity.
And so now if Salehe was focused, well, just quick thought. I have a lot of respect for Salehe, for his design style, for what he's been able to do from an audience perspective and for making an audience hype perspective. If this announcement was Salehe was becoming creative director of Puma or whatever, and he was going to focus his energy in the same way you'd get like Matthew Blasey focusing his energy or Pharrell and Louis Vuitton, that would be very interesting. I feel like a creative person at the helm of something that strikes across things. And he's an interesting choice for that. In fact, a choice that like people were throwing out as behind Martine Rose and stuff as backups for Pharrell, right? Like in a long shot. And so if that would be interesting, that's just another collaborator. I don't feel like it has that resonance. But to your point, that kind of has less of this, like, all right, there's another announcement every 2 weeks, every 2 months. Are we at the era where someone at his level or where these brands are interested in having like one figurehead in the way the high fashion brands do? Or is it more in their interest to have this rotating cast of collaborators?
I think it's case by case, right? But go ahead, Jordan.
No. Go.
I think it's case by case. When it comes to Puma, I think for them, they need to have a bullseye. And to me, Salehe offers a somewhere to focus for the outside viewer to be like, this is what Puma's doing. And if he can land something that is significantly different in the marketplace, then I think they have something to be disciplined and rally around. Now, the thing, Nike gets so much crap right now about what they're doing in the marketplace, what they're not doing right in the marketplace. What I will say about Nike is they have the ability to have a focal point, find whether it's a signature athlete or a collaborator like Virgil Abloh. If you don't remember what happened in 2016 and when it released in 2017, Nike always has the ability to focus on what they need to focus on. They elevated Virgil above every other priority in 2017, and they made sure the world knew about it. They didn't leave it to chance.
Yeah, but then what has happened since 2017? Like, that was legendary. That was one of the best point in time, best execution of the actual product, like just everything coming together. Like, who is that person now? Like, what does that even look like? What is that? I just feel like has there been any story since then besides Travis Scott that like is really at that level?
I don't think so, because I think it gets to the core of what you're saying, Oren, which is, are we going to have anything like really impactful? And Virgil did the 10, which is like an entire collection that they story told around Fashion Week in New York. They have the whole space. You have continuous drops over the 10. You can go back to that repeated playbook. And now it's kind of like we get the one silhouette, we get another silhouette, you get an accessory.
And Virgil had the creative vision to be able to do the 10, right?
Yeah.
He came in as somebody who can execute. And so people that don't know, he took 10 of the legendary Nike silhouettes and put his own spin on all of them. And literally all of them were so good and like so well done that they were all hype sneakers that any of us would be happy to have. Like the least popular ones, probably the Converse vulcanized ones, are still amazing, right? Now, I actually think that there's only a certain number of people that can have enough creative vision to be able to apply themselves to a wide swath of a company's history. But I'd look at Salehe probably could do that in an interesting way.
There's one that we're not talking about, and it's a massive issue right now. And there's rumors that leaked about it this week. And we're talking about Jerry Lorenzo and Adidas. That was supposed to be the next big major thing in sneakers. And the fact that no one here even was top of mind, it points to
it's because they didn't put out enough product, and the sneakers they did put out were good, and his like faux Birkenstock he put out was better than the footwear he did for Nike, right?
Well, yeah, it didn't work. It didn't really work with Nike. So I was gonna enter that into the conversation. Adidas announced Jerry Lorenzo as the basketball creative director. He was, they were moving to Los Angeles. It was probably 4 years ago, and he was going to be the creative director. And that was this new era of this is a long-term partnership. They're going to have influence over the thing, but it's gotten rocky. And I think to answer your original question, Oren, is I think it's really hard for these brands to do this with collaborators. And you see, Bimma and I probably get a little bit of the chirping, but it's you can just tell the Jerry partnership, they've had to rework it. It's hard. It's delayed because he is this creative visionary. They're really hard to work with sometimes. And that's a good thing. But it doesn't work well in corporate environments where, to go earlier, I actually heard a term this week. I learned HIPPO, an acronym. Have you guys heard this? Highest paid person's opinion is basically what people default to. And I thought that was genius. That's how ZOA happens. And that's how, some people can shut these things down and it doesn't work because the highest paid person's opinion disagrees or doesn't happen, And I would say one other thing. The 10 happened because Nike was getting its butt kicked at the time, and they would have never allowed someone to do to the
Adidas Yeezy.
What Yeezy exactly was really trending, Boost, all of that. And out of a mode of desperation, which I actually think sometimes is where Nike can be best, they gave him the keys, and then it unlocked this beautiful new thing. Otherwise, they're trying to keep the control too much. And that's kind of this conflict that we have between corporations and creators. That's always going to be the rub.
Well, and now we have this time, and Ashley, I'm interested in your take on this, where basically we have designers previously were the only people that could do this, or celebrities that, you then had their team or whatever come in who to be that next visionary. But now I think we see creators and different types of partnerships and influencers of different kinds. How do you think brands should be thinking about this if they're trying to bring in creative vision to take them to the next level, whether it's a footwear brand or a CPG brand or wherever? Where do you look for that? What's the most culturally relevant thing going forward?
I think there is. I was consulting with a company who had this idea that kind of logistically it was a little tough for them to pull off, but in theory it was good. And what the idea was is they wanted to tap creators and in a variety of different demographics that kind of spoke to their audience and bring them together as a kind of hive mind mastermind that they could just bring in for quarterly meetings, let's say, right? And they compensate them on retainer, say, hey, we're launching this campaign. You guys are so in it. You guys have your lives, you do your own job. But what do you think about this? How would you level this campaign up? Or how would you level this product rollout up? And I think even getting that kind of feedback from people who are out there, and we talk about this every day, right? We are kind of creators, but we're not creators first. We kind of work in marketing, we work in brand, we operate a bunch of different things. And then we just happen to make content. But as a byproduct of making content every day, we're just kind of chronically online, right? We're in there. We know what kind of works in these spaces. We know if someone pitches us on a campaign, it's okay, here's how you get so much more mileage out of that campaign. And we can just feed you those ideas. So it just kind of incrementally adds a lot of value to these campaigns. So my thing is, I don't know what kind of, union is brought together. But imagine if you're a company and you had a kind of like board of advisors that's just 30 creators who are like the top in their fields or in their spaces, that you pay them a good amount to kind of like give you advice and not just promote the brand and product, but like, hey, help me think through this campaign. And like, this is what I'm planning. This is how I'm thinking about my influencer partnerships. Like, is this good? Is this bad? Is this stupid? You know, give me like those live thoughts.
Why
the
don't brands do that? Why don't they do that?
This is a great idea.
They don't
That's why
wanna
they don't want to hear. Because the people there think that they have the best ideas. They haven't been, and they can keep skipping around job to job whenever that gets disproven and blame it on whatever was happening at the last place. And this is it's becoming more and more apparent in the internet era, but it's always been that to some extent.
Yeah, touche. Well, I mean, I do think though, this is however you want to describe the 10 effect, you know, having a creative director in-house. I think, you know, Ashwinn, that's a great call, is like in-house content advisor, you know. And so I think we have creative director as this accepted title. I do think there will be the new like content consultant or content creator. JT Barrett actually did a video on this today, or at least I saw it on TikTok today. And he's like, you know, there's 3 options at a company. Either one, you can have someone in-house who learns social and learns brands and is going to be the one who is dedicated. 2, you can hire out an agency and see if they can learn social and organic social and all that. And, you know, it's hit or miss. Or 3, you can bring a creator who understands organic social in-house, either through a full-time role or, you know, as a 1099. And I posited, though, there's option 4, which is try all 3 for very short periods of time and don't have any longevity with it, and give up and keep trying all different 3 at different points in time.
Well, I think the hardest part about what he's calling out is, you see this all the time. I see people now. It's commonplace, right? Everyone wants a creator to represent them. They want more creators who are just making content on their feeds. But those are actually harder and harder to find. I think at this point, a lot of the good ones have been scooped up and realized how much money they can make separately from it. And so now it's like people will be like, oh, I'm going to tweet this out. Maybe I'm going to get some DMs. I'm going to do this or that. Like, all the good people are hard and far in between. So I feel like it's almost like boot camps within these companies to be able to raise what that really looks like. And then that's what I'm interested in, is comparing some of these next level of brands, right? Because you look at Jerry, Salehe, these people, these are all from a different generation of this. Like Salehe was at Versace, and some of these other things, they came up through a more traditional design, basically history. Whereas now these brands, the ones that are popping off, if you look at like Broken Planet or Der Schutz or whatever Mode's brand's name is, like all these like brands that are really hot with like the kids, like they have no traditional background from that. They went straight to virality. And how would that, like, they're actually, it's almost so foreign that you can't even imagine how that collab would look. You know, you can see it with someone like Minted, that's like kind of like the millennial version of that. But I'm very interested to see, like, it feels like the distance between those designers that are resonating with the kids, like even with the like you know, even Cortez for example, like versus what you actually need to succeed in a big company framework is really complicated.
I mean, Cortez is even on the older side of Gen Z, right? Like, it's still not in a lower side, and you know, again, this is not happening in a lot of places, but there are some places that are starting to skip over Gen Z, and that's a whole other topic. They're going straight to Gen Alpha because people are like, I'm tired of dealing with Gen Z.
Well, so how should a brand approach that? So like, if you're looking for brand direction, we obviously have all these generations. You know, like what would be a good reason to skip Gen Z or not? What would be the implications of that? You know, like what, we're in a niche world, right? If you want to do that, you are more than set up for success to be able to be like, I sell the Gen X, you know?
I think brands in general got to figure out who they want to talk to. I think they're trying to speak to too many people, and they run into a lot more of those issues today than in the past. But we're seeing a lot of big brands fall over themselves because people are like, who are you talking to, right? You have millennials getting upset with big brands because they feel like they're getting pushed out because Gen Z's the only thing that they want to talk about. And then you have boomers who's got all this money who are like, why ain't nobody talking to us? To me, it's preference. And obviously there's data, right? That's in that as well. But I think it comes down to brands actually just being disciplined and minimizing all of the things they're trying to go after.
So this is a good point, because we were talking about Patagonia earlier as an example of a brand that's disciplined, right? And not trying to talk to everyone. Let's say Patagonia was under different leadership, had different philosophies, right? And then you start seeing this trend of like the not just the VC bro, but like the financial markets, right? The financial audience, the financial bro kind of co-opting Patagonia, because like, fine, it's like a inoffensive, solid kind of like work vest, right? It's casual and professional. Great. So that audience starts using it. Okay. Under different leadership, there's very much a world in which they're like, all right, we're leaning into this audience. We got to do a collab with like these brands. We got to do a collab with
the Excel limited edition is about to drop and go crazy. Yeah.
Right. Go crazy with that. Do like
the Microsoft Teams Patagonia, though.
All partnerships of sponsoring XL World Tournaments. I mean, there's a world what could go like so kind of unhinged. Yeah, exactly. Midtown uniform. But this company has never once spoken to that audience. This company has always stayed disciplined around like, hey, we're for like people who like adventure and like the outdoors and care about our environment. And like
now, so they're a story brand.
Behaviors over age. Behaviors over age.
Behaviors over age.
That is an important thing, because I could be any age and share the same mindset as a lot of different ages, right? But when you tell me, because I'm not between the ages of 16 and 24, that I'm not for your brand, guess what? I'm going elsewhere. But Patagonia never had to do that, because they were like, we're not playing that game. We're playing the game of like, we care about sustainability and outdoor.
I actually think that like, I wonder if Patagonia is one of those brands who's actually aged with their consumer. So one of the things I think that's challenging for Nike right now is Nike's target consumer has always been the youth, right? So when old people say they're going to burn their Monarchs, Nike doesn't care, because they're trying to reach the young audience. But if you keep churning and burning and the young people get old, and you hope that they stay with you, but if you, in this new day and age, if you don't keep talking to them, then they go somewhere else and they're served by someone else. And I think that's this new, one of the riffs that I have is like, we have the old television model, which puts you in like a very general bucket. It was like 18 to 54-year-old males or 25 to 44. And the new algorithm is like 23 to 27-year-olds who are interested in health, wellness, anime plus Comic-Con, whatever your niche is. It can get super, super specific. And I still think a lot of brands are living in the television demographic era, trying to take this wide bucket and not go sharp enough.
Yeah, that's Instagram versus TikTok too, right? Instagram algorithm will give you, I want to learn how to make money. I like fitness. I like marketing, right? But then the TikTok algorithm will be like, I will give you, like you like anime, conspiracy theories, like, and you also speak 2 languages. Perfect. And I think that's an interesting, brands can choose their own adventure, what they want to go on. But I think the future is probably headed towards the much more niche. But to your point earlier, I love the idea of the through lines, the idea that matters way more than the behavior matters way more than the age group that's I think how everyone has to feel, right? Because I think consumer habits, people are catching and shifting, and I think all the generational stereotypes we had of consumption are moving.
Yeah, and I also think it's like I've always believed that when you're unable to pick an audience, it comes from a place of fear. You feel like you're afraid that you're going to lose out on other audiences. Because you don't have the discipline, or you haven't done the research to really truly own who you want to be. Jordan actually posted something a couple weeks ago that I thought it was brilliant on behalf of Nike. And I know they got in trouble for the China version of the ad, but the stance of the ad was basically they cared about winning and nothing else, right? And to me, that was classic. That's classic Nike. That's the brand that they are. So them trying to be something that they're not, it doesn't come across as authentic. Whereas like, back in the day, Outdoor Voices had a completely different ethos, and people rallied around that. And that's totally okay. But you can't just be sitting here looking left lane, right lane, and being like, oh no, now we got to do what they're doing. You got to still own what you do. And Ashwinn talks about that a lot. Own your lane.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. Speaking of, did they get in trouble for that? I haven't seen anything on that.
But, yeah. They're getting in trouble in China.
Always. I'm trying to figure out how to share something here, y'all. I've got a couple ideas that I want to share. We were talking about collaborators and the future of creators. What are we missing? And I can't get this thing to work. I'll try one more and then we'll go. Drum roll, please. Nope. Not gonna work.
Spent time creating something?
I absolutely spent time creating it. Well, we'll see it in the short form. All right. So Tobe Inigwagwe. How do I how do I say Tobe? You guys know who I'm
Tobe
talking
Nwigwe. Tobe
Nwigwe.
Nwigwe.
Thank you. Have you interviewed Tobe, by the way, Bimma?
I have.
Okay. All right. So Tobe has a really, to me, I don't think enough brands have tapped into Tobe. I think there's like, to me, he's this future of a creator. He's a little outside of your classic designer, but the man can clearly has this incredible creative direction and world that he lives in that is so creative. It has this mint color. I'm gonna bring it up for anybody, but you know, he's got this mint color that he's always, you know, doing
Wearing
all of his
concerts,
all his sets, all of his you know, houses that are behind him, the costumes, wardrobe, you know, whatever he's wearing. To me, I see like a couple of things, and we were like spitballing, but first and foremost, why is Tiffany not doing a collaboration with Tobe and his family, right? Tobe and Fat, you could say maybe Tiffany is, you know, headed after females. But in every picture they have some, you know, they're often, you know, smiling. They got jewels, they got everything. I think Tiffany's color, they could do like a beautiful set. It would allow them to like reach a new audience. He could do, you know, the female side through Fat. They could do a more male side through him, which, by the way, I did see Pharrell has collaborated with Tiffany, of course, because he's collaborated with everybody. But I just think there's also a totally less premium version of him like collaborating with a gum company. I just can't get Mint out of my head, like Mint Dentistry or somebody at like Orbitz needs to be working with this dude. Oh my gosh, like the colors have got to go. And I want to see more of these just creative people in general being tapped. And you could do it for CPG, you could do it for gum, you could do it for jewelry. I think, you know, running the sneaker playbook in these other categories would be super interesting.
Damn. I mean, I want to see it.
I know. Anybody else that y'all are feeling like are like good creator people out there who could put their twist on something?
I think you're looking at four of them right now.
Yeah.
Get us in there on Winnebago.
I wasn't gonna say it, but no,
that's right. The Winnebago. We need the Winnebago tour. If anybody has deep contacts in big auto, in the camping industry, we need a Winnebago connection.
You know, this I think is it's an interesting segue to another topic. As we're, you know, kind of in the chat earlier talking about AI wearables. There was some, you know, big news in AI wearables this week, and I bring it back to kind of like creators and creative people because, you know, we often see them in predominantly doing like fashion and apparel collabs, right? That's kind of like the core place that they play. And then, okay, you have some creative stuff happening in CPG and with brands. But once you get into tech, right? Once you get into physical devices and software, there's less of that energy brought over there. And I think that's probably one place where they could actually use a lot of that energy, either from a creative direction standpoint, not necessarily like, hey, let's, you know, reskin the product to be, Tobe color, but let's bring in his kind of like creative direction and insight to, you know, make this a better launch.
Are you calling for big Dwayne energy, Ashwinn? Is that what you were saying?
I'm calling. Yes, I'm calling for very big Dwayne energy.
Well, I think there's a cultural divide there, though, because I feel like every time tech calls in a culture person, it's just like, oh yeah, well, like, you know, yeah, Ja Rule's here, so we just gotta do what Ja Rule says. What he thinks is cool, and they let it kind of go too far. Whereas I think what the skill set that a lot of the, whether it's soda companies or sneaker companies or whoever, have been able to translate someone's vision into something that also sells. But I do think that they do need that more than ever, right? I think we touched on this briefly in some of the past ones, but this whole Meta Ray-Ban conversation in Supreme is another one, right? Where Meta Ray-Bans succeed in large part because they are Ray-Bans, right? It has gotten a bunch of adoption because it has tech features and something that looks completely normal. And that's how I think we see the future of AI is in our same AirPods or same whatever. But it hasn't hit the adoption numbers they want. They're like, how do we make this a really cool item versus just like an item that's easily adoptable? Maybe we could leverage so many of the Luxottica brands. It doesn't have to just be Supreme, but Luxottica has licenses for almost any eyewear. Like they're thinking the right concept. How do we make this an it item? Because I do believe tech has to have some level of adoption like that. I use Whoop as a good use case for this because I feel like Whoop got that adoption because other people will be like, oh, like you have a Whoop? Like it became like a light status in a way that like a Fitbit or others kind of didn't. And a lot of that was just due to its subtlety. But that kind of approach has to be thought about by technology companies. It's not happening in these AI products, right? Even if you got teenage engineering to design it, it isn't adoptable. And so I'm curious, I think that the gap has to get bridged, but how will we even attempt to do it?
I mean, this is coming down to poor collaboration, in my opinion, right? The better part of this is that industrial designers are great, but when we're talking about wearables and what people want to wear on their bodies and show off in a lifestyle sense, you need to get people in the building who have experience doing that, and you need to put those people together until they can figure out how to create something aesthetically as beautiful as a pair of Ray-Bans that happen to feature tech from Meta. But as long as tech keeps operating on its side and luxury and jewelry and fashion keeps operating on this side, you're never going to get to that sweet spot. Now, we've seen the closest tech company come closest to that is Apple, and it's because the founder and the ethos had a strong passion for design and creative and was trying to make that for that audience. But when we look at the folks that run these other tech companies, where we're looking at Mark Zuckerberg, or we're looking at I'm gonna forget homie's name that runs Google, or Elon Musk, right? Like these guys are not, their taste is not in that realm. Their taste is in tech. Their taste is in innovation. Their taste is not in art, right? Mark can go around and change the uniform and wear chains and rock streetwear all he wants to, but that's not gonna change who the person is.
Yeah, that's such a great point, man. And that's, that to me is some of that kind of corporate insanity that it doesn't fit the right structure, right? You say we need an industrial designer to do this thing, or we need wearable designer to do these things, but you're exactly right. Where is the operating word there? And when people are thinking of, you obviously have to nail the function, but wearing is the thing. And I think, Oren, both these examples of Ray-Ban and Whoop, they do have a bit of a status symbol to them, although I'm curious why Meta hasn't really pulled that lever yet with that Ray-Ban. Like it's all just kind of very plain in the Wayfarer. Sure, they have to get the tech right, but Supreme could give them that element.
I think it's because it's working. I think it's the only thing that's worked for them is not pulling a lever, right? And if they do it, they have to do it so right. And even if you do the Supreme one, if they go make red Supreme banded Meta Ray-Bans, there is a single-digit % chance if they execute that rollout really right, they could do it really cool. But that is a very low chance, right? Just because of the state of which Supreme is in, the kind of in the state of which a company like Meta would actually end up rolling that out. But I think like even with those other Ray-Bans, like I think they're just happy to see something like this get success. But also I think Supreme isn't the brand to leverage for that, right? Like in the Luxottica portfolio. And I think there'd be some other, but people with that level of nuance to even discuss and throw around those ideas, like they're not like they're being like, we're going to buy out Essence just to get the creative talent involved in buying there to explain to us what's going to happen. Like that's not how they're thinking about this.
All right, I have one idea though for how you could like make the Supreme Meta Ray-Ban. Supreme is basically built on all these like classic skate videos and VHS skate video montage recorder. If you could somehow implement, wearable to be capturing skate tricks in a wholly different new POV, maybe that's your fine line of like keeping it authentic. But even with that, like, so skate culture that's authentic is always great. I think we saw that with Vans Off the Wall this last few months ago, right? Being able to like execute a relevant cultural event, but it isn't mainstream in the way that was mainstream cool anymore. It's not Tony Hawk era. So even if you do that authentically, it's like great, like washed millennial skaters, and then maybe some younger people who look up to that are going to be into it. But like, the skate Supreme crossover pipeline is not what it was. Well, we were talking single digit percentage.
That's fair. So we'll take the darts at the board.
We're just going.
Where can we? So any of these things. So let's hit the topic of like, all right. So these AI wearables are launching. What look or form factor or feel or company or direction do any of us feel would help them get some level of adoption? And I'll start with one just because someone mentioned Apple and Gentle Monster above. Like there is a couple of high fashion collabs. There is a Gentle Monster AI wearable that a certain crowd would adopt. It's obviously not mainstream. Like that's particularly interesting, but super niche. Curious if you guys think of it, what actually helps those get adopted from a brand direction or collaboration perspective?
So I'll take one on what launched this week, right? Which is
Friend.
for anyone who didn't
Friend.
see it, Friend. So the Friend, it's a little wearable necklace that is always listening, and it has a companion app, and basically that companion app is like, whatever, AI powered, and it will send you these push notifications of how it's interpreting your conversation or what you're doing. And basically like a friend is sitting on your shoulder, giving you some advice. And this kind of went pretty viral on Twitter, had like 20 or 30 million views. And I would say for the most part, and correct me if I'm wrong, say for the most part, it's kind of getting flamed as being like, this is so dystopian. And it's like, listen, they made like a super cinematic movie, and I think they really leaned into this idea that it's like, hey, it's like a little dystopian. You kind of feel like you're watching. Like,
and to be fair, when's the last thing that went viral on Twitter that wasn't getting flamed? When was the last like, this is a positive launch?
Exactly.
Engagement equals engagement.
So what I think is that the challenge with this, right? It's like, you can launch a new product, and if the goal of that new product, everyone's goal of a new product is like, hey, we want the launch to be super splashy and super viral and for everyone to know about it. And I actually think in this case where you're introducing a completely new product that you wear, right? So it's this new behavior, and you are trying to start getting adoption for this by having everyone see this and then everyone kind of flame it, like the vocal majority flame it as a result. It kind of feels like it's dead on arrival, even before you could find those audiences where there's actually, you could find a lot of traction with the product. And I think there's cascading effects of that.
I feel like the only way that you can get that level of virality now is negative. I feel like they were prepared for that. Like you could see from his responses, he was ready to be the negative main character of the day. And even the fact they dropped a story to make them even more viral, that they paid 1.8 million for this domain and like made sure that was relevant to specifically start engineering even other cycle. And I look at it like, when you're looking at something like that, you're going to get flamed anyway. It's like you release any crypto thing, you're going to get flamed just because it is what it is. It's very similar to AI thing now. I think they look at Rabbit and all these and you go, all right, like, can we make sure our use case gets in front of like the percentage of adoption? Hey, can we get 2% of users to be like, this is actually really interesting. Oh, it's only $99 and convert? That I think is what you could ask for. And that massive virality gives them a way larger spike to get that 2% from than they're ever going to get by trying to get it purely off of like feedback and response. And as sad as that is, I think that is the only real way to that mass level of virality that you can see today for a brand new brand.
Yeah,
and I'm making a hot take, so curious what the responses are.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. It's like, I would be curious to see, I mean, this product that functionally actually seems pretty decent in terms of what it can do. Whereas, the Humane launch, they were showing off that product and it was like super buggy and super slow. And it's like, all right, I'm not going to wait 8 seconds for this thing to like show me something that I can figure out on my phone. So, I think like the Humane virality, I'd be super curious to know what's going on at that company right now, right? What is like internal morale? What is like adoption actually looked like for this product? Or because it was kind of like, it got flamed so hard out the gate, everyone like in media and individuals were like, dude, this thing is like going nowhere and it sucks. And then McBod comes in and he's just like, yeah, this thing sucks too. Is that company like at a standstill now? Or like, do they just have to pivot so hard? And it's like, that affects like the psyche of the people who are working there, right? You also don't want to be someone who's like the lead engineer or on the engineering team for a company and a product where like, oh, you're working on that thing that just got like absolutely decimated and like barely works. So I think there's like a negative effect for like internal like company culture when a thing is flamed like that.
Yeah.
But I also think like, I agree that like virality is like super important and getting that adoption, and like, sure, even if you can convert 1 or 2%, that's great. But I would say like one counter to that is, okay, say this thing Friend is like getting super flamed, but it actually has like really interesting use cases in like the medical space, right? Maybe say like it's super helpful for nurses and doctors to like have this thing like always on and like give them a tip where it's like, hey, your patient like didn't seem to understand what was going on. Is there this other effect where because like that audience has now seen this thing like ridiculed in the public that they're not going to adopt it because it's like, oh, now I'm going out on a limb to be this early adopter of this thing that like.
Well, I think especially if you're like, I think all of Gen X, for instance, like we had tested some ads like on this previous project a few years ago where if something was getting ridiculed in the mainstream and you were selling to Gen X, they want to buy it more, right? So I do think there's this whole like there's a generational and niche responses to that, from tech adopters being like, I'm an individual, I have my own opinion, to someone being like, okay, well, people on Twitter are flaming it, but people on Twitter don't matter, to like, hey, I actually see my use case in this, to your point about the nurse, or the, I want to get this for, okay, I get why this is creepy for them, but I want to get it for my elderly grandmother or whatever. I think it is the best way to begin to just open up that conversation.
Yeah, Oren, I think you're giving him too much credit for like being prepared to be flamed. I do not think, I think you either, in that scenario, that's like liquid death to me, you know, like, hey, let's just make people flame us, like, or we've seen other strategies like that. And, you know, this though, I would think if you have a really high dollar, you know, wearable that you've been putting into it, I think they're trying to tug your heartstrings. I don't know that they're, and honestly,
it's a $99 wearable. It was all youth, like the way like the jokes and the stuff were, how fast some of the spoofs were on it is basically, to me, is contrived.
Well, I mean, is that the point though? It just got more attention than, I mean, I guess that's the point. It got the attention. It got us talking about it. I now know that it even exists. You know, when I saw the $1.8 million website, and now I'm curious to know what the reviews are going to be of people who actually use it. And I, of course, am like, I don't think it's for me, but I'm curious to know what people will use it for.
Well, I think the most interesting thing to me about this is that, like, functionally, everyone's going to argue about whatever it is. But if it aesthetically had been significantly cooler, or if there had been the right designs implied on it, or people were like, oh, I love the look, or I love the ID, I think then the conversation would be significantly more positive to them, which is interesting.
Well, we all know, if we've sat around any of these round tables, none of the people who are sitting at that executive table are going to have any context for whether the positive, you know, the feedback was positive or negative. It's going to say 22 million views. It's going to say X billion impressions. You know, we're going to say this many, you know, we got this person and this person who are verified in touch with us. And, you know, that's going to be the recap. So I don't even know that there's nuance enough for them to know whether it was positive or negative sentiment.
I mean, when was the last thing we saw that was this, that had this type of conversation? Even
well, also, one of the things I was thinking about this, I think is Twitter's smaller than ever. I think we have less X users truly than ever. Because what I was trying to remember was the last thing that crossed over all the segments of Twitter that I'm in. I'm in CPG Twitter, I'm in money Twitter, I'm in based Twitter, sneaker Twitter, like all of these different, and every single one of them had an opinion on this. Tech Twitter, the whole nine. And that was one of the first subjects that where like a product got to that level, which to me means just how small that audience of people that are consider themselves willing to weigh in on things and who talk about that stuff on that network are. Yet still the power of that network, if you are in that chamber, like that's what that told to me. That basically to me was like, oh, you can be the main character way easier than ever because of how small Twitter's gotten. And all the people that are remaining are like the chronically online, like talkers that make everything move anyway. I thought that was really interesting.
Have you ever seen the stat? I think this is in the whole creator economy, but Twitter, I think, is one of them that like it's 0.5% of people are creating the content that is consumed by, you know, 99.5%. Something, you know, there's something about that where it's basically you may have 500 million users, 100 million users, less than 1 million people are going to be actually creating anything, and all the other people are just, you know, consuming. So it's a fair call.
Emmanuel said same with friends, same with the Apple VR goggles, which are now discontinued.
Yeah, that was the last one that got this much attention in there. That's a good call out. And that required Apple to be able to get it to there. Whereas these guys raised what, $2.5 million, like some like paltry amount of money, and were able to get that same level of attention online with a product that also been done 10x before by virtue of their launch strategy, right? That we've already seen this novel play out a few times. Interesting.
Well, you know what, guys? I'm just going to tell you, we all have our corners of the internet. I hadn't even heard about this until you dropped it in the group chat. You know, yeah.
Yeah, at Topgolf, you know, they're still using ChatGPT to write their sales emails to Topgolf.
Well,
the progression to the
very important Olympic sports are happening. Golf is teeing off in the Olympics.
What does 7-Eleven think about the amulets? That's really the way in that we need. Like,
this is what we need to know.
The 7-Eleven amulet Venn diagram we'll put that in the graphic with the screen.
Absolutely.
All right. Any parting thoughts? The last 60 seconds. Anyone have anything to plug? Ashwinn, run West Side Highway coming soon.
We're just running tomorrow. That's it. That's all I got.
Running tomorrow. I got a new show coming on Spring Hill in September. So that's the only thing I'm plugging right now.
Let's go, bro. Spring Hill, huh? Give me a minute.
Spring Hill is like a network. I know Spring Hill Suites, but I'm assuming it's not the same thing.
No, it's LeBron. It's LeBron and
from the Andrew. Yeah, amazing. Congratulations. Let's go.
Yeah, that's incredible,
Orange,
man.
Hilarious. That's funny as hell. Because I passed by Spring Hill Suites and I've done the same thing.
I was like, it's a media play. Yeah.
The hype house we could host at the Spring Hill.
It's an extended stay conceptual piece.
Celebrate. Oh my god.
That's amazing. We'll plug it when it comes out.
The extended stay hype house. Like, I'm actually here for this. Oh my gosh. That's so good. Ashwinn, where can people get the West Side Highway tees?
Yeah, what's up, man? Why hadn't I been seated? Why have I not been seated?
Oh, that's right. That's right. I got to make a purple one for you.
I'm surprised you made it so simple that it's runwestsidehighway.com and not like, Ashwinn West Side Highway, Bago.org or,
Try westsidehighway.run.nyc. Protected site.
Oh my gosh.
It's a limerick. It's also a domain.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, and Oren, what's Valuable Studios? What do we got coming for Valuable Studios?
8:15. We are releasing 8:15. We're plugged up.
All right.
Appreciate y'all.
All right, y'all. Have a great week. Next week, maybe we'll workshop a couple of these brands. We'll see.
Yeah. I will be in the trenches next week, so it'll be y'all. It'll be hitting it.
All right. Thanks everybody for tuning in. All right. Bye.